Hey, Lance, it was good to see you this week in Dallas.
It was a fun conference, and of course, Mid-America is one of the largest of its type.
The largest. Yeah.
And Bob, as we both know, that's the time when SBA likes to announce new things.
And what did they announce?
Well, I mean, SBA 1 is not new. I mean, we've been hearing about it for the last couple months, but SBA went live on the East Coast about a month ago, and now it's available to Region 6, and it will continue to roll out throughout the country. And many of our participants may not know, but I have stepped across to the dark side and went to work as a SBA senior vice president at a bank. And I'm in process, Bob, of getting us signed up for SBA 1. And the one thing I can say about it, be ready for a few small headaches in getting signed up and using it for the first time, but also realize that this is the future of origination, servicing, and liquidation on your SBA loans. And over time, you will realize great efficiencies using SBA 1. So that's the one big announcement that we got to participate in. And the other significant thing, Bob, that I love that I heard from John Miller was talking about simplification of franchise eligibility. I think that's huge because we spend as lenders a significant amount of time making sure that a franchise is eligible. SBA is talking about, now I don't know the details, but the possibility that there's going to be a link you can go to, put in a franchise name, and it's going to say, good to go.
Yeah.
And that'll
Jiffy
be
Lube, thumbs up, thumbs down, and and that's the way it should be. They're simplifying affiliates. They're breaking out the SOP. There will now be 2 SOPs, one for shock, one for 7A, and one for 504. I like the direction the agency's going. And for the attendees in your servicing class, it's not going to change your job in terms of what you need to know and how to do it. It's just going to make it simpler and faster and more efficient. And the dashboard is going to be great if they can pull it off.
Well, I think from a servicing perspective, the simplification of the franchise rules will be a huge thing. When you're doing a purchase demand kit, if the loan goes into liquidation, there's not going to be as much documentation that you have to worry about. Plus, SBA 1 is supposed to already have that information. So at some point, our participants in the servicing class, they're going to roll out the servicing functionality on SBA 1. So, I would recommend that you start reading up on it. If you go to the SBA's website and type in SBA 1, there's already some good information there. And
Lance,
Coleman Publishing, Bob's always rolling out great information about SBA 1 as well.
There's a rumor we're going to have a webinar on it next month. Lance, there's a question from Laura, which is, can you please repeat when SBA is rolled out? It depends on region. They've done it for the Mid-Atlantic area and also now Region 6. I don't know the exact schedule. Do we know, Laura, where are you out of? Do we know where Laura is? What else have you heard about that, Lance?
Well, they'll roll it out region by region.
Right.
Part of the reason for that is SBA historically rolls out software that has a few glitches, so they don't just make it available nationwide immediately. When I was deputy, we had something that rolled out, and they did it region by region. Really, the East Coast got it. The next region that I expect, Bob, will be Flagel.
Florida, makes sense.
I expect that Florida area will get it next. And when your lender conference, and that's why it's important for our SBA lenders to participate in these, they're basically rolling it out lender conference by lender conference.
I would assume since NAGO is sometime in October, it will be nationwide in mid-October. That would be my guess. Right. Yeah. Okay.
But one thing you might do, just to play, Bob, those who have access to CLS, which is how you get on E-Tran and everything, whoever has the permissions authority, go see if you can click on and get it.
Yeah, do that. Go in there. They have a beta test you can play around with, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Southeast, South Carolina, Georgia, Carolinas. I suspect that'll be live. I would guess.
Think, Flagle's in 2 weeks. I bet
Yeah.
it'll be live there in 2 weeks.
That would be my guess. I agree with that. But that's a great idea. Go check your CLS and see if you can hook into it in terms of the beta. Let's go to the polls. How many reinstatements have you had to submit to SBA for approval in the last year? Why are you asking this, Lance?
Well, Bob, reinstatements is something I continue to want to elevate to our servicing SBA professionals. And the reason for that, you need to keep up with your SBA portfolio, on the SBA portfolio that SBA in fact has. And one of the most challenging things that you can run into is when you think a loan has always been current in the SBA system, you wake up and you have a default, and you go in and you found out that it was marked paid in full or it was canceled 3 years ago, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. So I think it's good to get in the portal, make sure that your loans have the right status, and if not, make sure and reinstate it. And just to clarify, the primary reasons for the need for reinstatement is when the loan is originated and the bank does not pay the guarantee fee on time. So if that occurs, you'll have to reinstate. The other reason is on 1502 reporting, there's a status drop-down box. And probably the other most common reasons are lines of credit that have a zero balance.
Right.
Sometimes the people doing the 1502 report, instead of putting current, will mark it paid in full because it has a zero balance, and that will result in the cancellation of the loan and the need for a reinstatement.
And I know I'm repeating myself to this crowd. I talked about this a couple weeks ago after Baltimore. But again, check your internal accounting transcripts with SBA transcripts. This is a servicer job. Match them up. And if it's on the SBA, if there's an outstanding loan on the SBA, but you haven't paid off or charged off, you have an issue. Also, if you think you have a loan and it's on your books, it's not in the SBA's books, that screams reinstatement. So that's a huge push by SBA to make sure that we're syncing up the two accounting systems between the bank and the government. After the final disbursement is the release of collateral on an SBA loan and unilateral action.
Yeah, this is almost a quiz question, Bob. The only reason I ask this is probably one of the most uncomfortable unilateral actions is the release of collateral. And I just wanted to get a feel for if I throw that question out there, what does our participant group think?
2/3 think it can be.
It is. Once the loan is fully disbursed, release of collateral is a unilateral action. It's one that you have to document and justify with a memorandum. But an example of something that comes up, Bob, SBA quite often requires a junior mortgage on the home of one of the guarantors. There's no real usable equity in that home. That guarantor wants to sell it or buy a new home. If there's no real usable equity, release it.
Is there ever an instance where we want to go to SBA to get their consent or on a
quite honestly, Bob, when I was deputy at SBA, if you as a participant bank submitted a unilateral action, the first 2 years I was there, we would come back to you and say, this is something you can do under your unilateral authority.
Do it.
Since I've left, Bob, they now tell the servicing centers, you just get an email that tells you what a unilateral action is. You don't really get confirmation that what you're requesting is. So understand the unilateral matrix, understand how to document a unilateral action. We talk about that in this course. Make sure you document it well. But by release of collateral, you're not going to get anything back from it.
Which SBA servicing center do you use? Why do you want to know this, Lance?
I just wanted to find out what the geographic representation of our class is. It's important for all servicing people to know that Little Rock covers the East Coast down to Florida and then migrates west to Texas. It'll go north and pick up Oklahoma and then shoot back over. Fresno is the Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, North and South Dakota. It moves from there down to Oklahoma, the northern border of Oklahoma, and then goes west. Everything west of Texas is Fresno.
I like this question. How many SBA servicing center employees do you have good lines of communication with?
You know why I asked that, Bob? I encourage every SBA lending group to have servicing employees who actually pick up the phone. An example, there's a young man that I hired in Little Rock. His name is Joel Tittle. Great banker, was in banking as a lender for about 10 years, then joined the SBA. One of the best ways to make sure your servicing actions move through the process efficiently is to have lines of communication with somebody at SBA in the servicing department.
Absolutely. And if you're in that none category, please send an email to me, and I will be more than happy to give you a personal introduction to the Fresno Servicing Center, Joel Steiner. Send it to Lance. He will be more than happy to introduce you to the people in Little Rock. And
I would just share with you, Bob,
yeah.
you know Mr. Stein, and Nikki Carrington is in the Little Rock Center. They both are very customer service oriented center directors, and they don't mind at all getting to know you as a participant lender.
As you said, if you show up at Fresno, they'll throw you a barbecue. They'll give you the throw up.
Bob, I want to come out to California and go see Joel right now.
They're very user friendly. You may not like the answer, but you will get a prompt answer, and they will bend over backwards to make sure you understand what their process is. And
hey, Bob, today, Bob, I wanted everybody to know my name, so I have a name tag on.
There you go. And you have what is that, a pig?
The Arkansas Razorbacks today at the bank were wearing our college team colors, and everybody on the call, Bob will remind you of the time that USC visited Arkansas and put a 52-7 thumping on us.
We're humble also. We can be humble. On your last SBA servicing action that required submission to SBA for approval, how long did it take SBA to respond?
Well, and I think this is a great question just to find out how long. Now, Bob, the time goal has changed since I left SBA. When I was there, we were required as part of our objective to complete all servicing actions that needed 90% of the servicing actions that required SBA's approval in 3 days or less.
I'm impressed by the results. I'm very impressed. I think that's outstanding.
Yeah, that really is. It shows that SBA is doing good work. Both servicing centers are there and want to take care of you. And I think the goal now is either 4 to 5 days. So they're telling us that at least 83% of the actions are happening in the time frame they should.
Recap week 3. What are the takeaways that you want to hammer home?
Bob, I want to back up briefly. The 17% that is taking a long time, get to know your people in the servicing centers, and maybe that will improve some.
And don't be concerned about sending an email to either the center directors and say, hey, this has been here 7 days, can you help out? You'll get a response.
Absolutely. You know, Bob, as much as I'd like to tell you SBA never loses anything,
yeah,
it happens. And so if your servicing action has not been responded to within a week, send an email.
Yeah.
Week 3, we talked about putting together a servicing request, the kind of information that you need to include. I was talking to Joel Tittle. I mentioned him a minute ago. He's one of the better servicing officers in Little Rock. And one of the things that he said most commonly is not included on actions that require financial analysis, no financial statements or no financial spread attached, or a servicing action that required looking at the collateral, no before and after collateral analysis. So I think it's important to understand what you need to include. We talked about how to get approval, and we've talked about a lot of that in our poll questions too today.
Very good. Email question number 1. Can you tell me what documents must be kept in original paper form and where to find that information in the SOPs? Sometimes documents are defined generically like collateral documentation. Can you be more specific? In this particular case, such as a mortgage, UCC, security agreement, appraisal, what do we do with these original documents in our world today?
I really, Bob, it's strange. I've had this question 3 times this week.
Yeah.
The SOP 5010-5H really doesn't tell you what you have to keep a wet ink form on. My recommendation is this is a prudent lending decision. Think about your regular commercial loans and what you keep wet ink copies of. My list is all your SBA forms, the note, security agreement, guarantees, and mortgage. And of course, the note, security agreement, guarantees, and mortgage on a 7A are going to be SBA forms. On an express loan, those may be your internal bank forms. But I think you have to go back and look at what you do in your regular commercial loans of similar size and do the same thing on your SBA loans. But at the least, Bob, you don't have to submit wet ink forms on a purchase demand kit. I mean, you're scanning those in and you're submitting them, but if you get an on-site review, you may have a requirement for wet ink forms. And if you get into litigation, one of the hot button items over the last 5 years is, provide that original note agreement, provide that original guarantee. So it's not as much an SBA requirement as it is a requirement to protect your bank.
The material states in a couple different places that a prepayment that requires a subsidy recoupment fee must have prior approval from SBA. However, the unilateral matrix has prepayments under the section no approval and notification. How do we handle this?
Well, it's kind of funny. In our breakout session at Mid-America, we did talk about this. And the first thing we had to do is make sure everybody understood that subsidy recoupment fee was just a prepayment penalty. I've told this story many times. When I'd worked around SBA loans forever, I'd go to work at SBA, and I spent the first week with a notepad writing down all the things I didn't know what it stood for or what it meant. But the prepayment penalty, you don't have to get approval for the prepayment penalty. What you have to get approval for is if you want some sort of modification or elimination of that prepayment penalty. The notice, the SOP 5057, which is your servicing SOP, is very clear that if there's going to be a prepayment of 20% or more of the loan, that the investors, i.e. Coleman, the FTA, has to be notified 10 days prior. Now, the question indicated the note agreement said 21 days. I've been through this a number of times. Now, Bob, don't wait till the 10th day, but you need to give Coleman at least 10 days notice.
When would you do this? When would we waive a prepayment fee, Lance?
Well, an example that I've shared with people, you've got 3 partners, 1 partner dies, there's life insurance on all 3, and as a result of life insurance, it resulted in a significant pay down on the loan. As center director, I can remember signing off on waiving the subsidy recoupment fee in those circumstances. In most circumstances, there really isn't a justification. It's one of those special circumstances. You don't want a death of a partner, but that's a good example of one.
Very good. What's week 4? We're halfway through. What are we talking about?
Week 4, we're going to talk about note modifications, collateral. We're going to talk about insurance coverages, life insurance, property casualty, liability insurance, work comp. We'll talk about what to do if there's changes in the management covenants. And we'll talk about loan assumptions. There are occasions where you get an opportunity, you've got an SBA borrower, they're in trouble, somebody comes along, wants to assume the deal. We talk about how to handle those. We also talk about transfers of participation, which don't happen a lot, but do happen sometimes, and that's when one SBA lending bank transfers their interest in the SBA loan to another SBA lending bank. So those are the things we cover this week, and it's great information for our servicing group.
Great. Good stuff. Good stuff. Do we have any other questions? Thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you next Friday. Thank you.